more news stories for you. Firstly, viewers, French military is withdrawing from Mali. Some contingents are leaving Mali and other Sahel countries. While French military is withdrawing from these countries, Russians are creeping in. Viewers, Russian Wagner fighters are being deployed by Mali's government. And an hour ago, US State Department issued a statement warning Mali against deployment of Russian Wagner fighters. Secondly, viewers, the New York Times today published an article. The article claims that the war was planned by Abiy and Assayas, and the war did not happen in response to TPLF's attack on Northern Command bases in November. But the war was planned long before that. We'll have a look at this article. Thirdly, in the previous video, I told you about some journalists who are in the custody of Ethiopian government forces. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has issued a statement about these journalists. At least some Ethiopian body is speaking about the journalists. We'll have a look at the statement of Human Rights Commission. And lastly, viewers, Mustafa Omar, Somali region's president, has talked, and in his talk, there are some hints that Oromo political prisoners could be freed in coming days. Jawar Bekele are in prison. Hamza Borana, Dawood Ibsa is under house arrest. Is there a likelihood of the release of these prisoners? We have a video clip of Mustafa Omar's speech for you. We'll have a look at this important development. Firstly, viewers, France is withdrawing parts of its military contingents from Mali and other Sahel countries. French troops and UN troops have been under attacks in Sahel region countries within the past few weeks. We have seen protests from locals in Niger and in Burkina Faso against French military presence. Now, France is going to withdraw around 2,000 of its soldiers from Mali. While France is withdrawing from Mali, Russia is creeping in, viewers. Mali saw a coup last year. Colonel Assimi Goïta removed elected government and he seized power. Now, reportedly, Mali's dictator is in talks with Russian Wagner fighters. Russian Wagner security company has strong backing of Russian military. The company is under sanctions from the US and the EU. And Mali is going to deploy Wagner fighters. Wagner fighters were deployed in Libya too, in Syria as well. Now Mali is going to deploy Wagner fighters. But just an hour ago, US State Department issued a statement. US State Department is warning Mali against the deployment of Wagner fighters. US State Department said that the Wagner group is under sanctions. It is involved in human rights abuses. That is why Mali's government must not deploy Russian Wagner fighters. I was talking to someone an hour ago that Africa seems to be a playground for bigger powers. The US, Russia, China, Turkey, France, all are trying to gain ground or to consolidate their positions in Africa. Why is that so many African countries have the presence of world powers? It would be a bit lopsided to blame just bigger powers, Western powers and world powers, that they are power hungry, that they are hungry for resources of Africa. African elite is equally responsible. African politicians, African tribal elders, African military officers, they are equally responsible since there are no elected, transparent governments in most parts of Africa. That is why world powers exploit these political fissures, political vulnerabilities in Africa, and they try to gain ground. So it would be lopsided to just blame world powers. World powers are conspiring with African elite. Who is suffering? African people are suffering. Secondly, viewers, New York Times today published an article. New York Times says that the war on Tigray was planned by Abiy and Isaias long before the attack on Ethiopian Northern Command by TPLF members on the 3rd of November 2020. While my position is the same, I've been saying that war did not happen in response to this attack which happened on the 3rd of November 2020. Obviously, war was planned. But why is the New York Times saying the same thing again and again? Today, the article claimed that new evidence has suggested that the war was planned long before the 3rd of November. But when you read the article, you don't find any credible and convincing evidence. The writer is only referring to some statements of anonymous Ethiopian government officials, some flights between Asmara and Addis Ababa. There is no new, convincing, credible evidence shared by the writer in the article. That is why Ethiopian government criticizes Western media, US media, that it is biased, that it is against Ethiopian government, that it is in support of Tigray Liberation Front. You don't need to prove this thing. Everyone knows about that, and everyone has been aware of this fact for the last 1 year, since the start of this war. It's not something new. So why is that you are repeating something which has been said time and again in the past few months? That is why people question your neutrality about the coverage of this war. Thirdly, viewers, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission has issued a statement about some journalists who are in the custody of Ethiopian forces. At least some Ethiopian body is monitoring the developments related to these journalists. In the previous video today and in some videos in this week, I told you about arrests of Ias Fai, Tamrat Nagara, then Maiza Muhammad, and Kibram Verko. And two other journalists, Dasso, Dolo, and Irmias Tesfaye. Ethiopian Rights Commission says that it is monitoring developments related to the detention of these journalists very closely. And whereabouts of two journalists are still unknown. The two journalists are Kibram Verko and Tamrat Nagara. Especially Tamrat Nagara's whereabouts must be made public. Why? Because he was very critical of Eritrean government, of Isaias Afwerki, Eritrean president. There are rumors going around that he might have been handed over to Eritrean government. So that is why Ethiopian government, Ethiopian Rights Commission must clarify about the whereabouts of Tamrat Nagara. Secondly, Kibram Verko, Ethiopian police says has been released, but his family says that they do not know about his whereabouts. Where is he? So at least Ethiopian Rights Commission says it is monitoring these developments related to the journalists, their detention. But Ethiopian Rights Commission just mentioned 4 journalists: Kibrom, Yasper Tesfaye, Maiza, and Tamrat Nagara. It did not make a mention of Dasso, Dulo, and Irmias Tesfaye. I think it should monitor the developments linked to these 2 journalists as well, who are from Oromia. Lastly, viewers, Mustafa Umar, Somali region's president, was heard talking about Oromo political prisoners. His talk indicates that Jawar Bekele could be released. He said in his speech, federal government will not nominate regional presidents now. People will decide, people of regions who will lead their regions. And secondly, he said, people will talk among themselves of the region. He mentioned Oromia. He said talks going to start in Oromia and Oromia regional government, Oromo prisoners, Oromo Liberation Army will decide, they'll talk. And that is the way to neutralize the threat of TPLF. He is a very vocal critic of TPLF. So he is confirming that Oromia regional government, Oromo prisoners in Addis Ababa, and Oromo Liberation Army, they will talk. It seems, viewers, that something is cooking up in Oromia, and Oromo political prisoners Jawar Bekele, Daud Ibsa could be released. Will Oromo Liberation Army be at the table? That remains to be seen. We don't know, because it signed a military pact with TDF. But there could be release of Jawar Bekele, Hamza Burana, and other Oromo leaders. And the purpose of this release would be to isolate Tigray People Liberation Front. Watch the video clip of Mustafa Umar's speech about the release of Oromo political prisoners. I think for watching.
States ka lagu noqonaya states ka hadda all inclusive discussion hadda la ansixiyay meesha u socda waxa weeye Oromo inay wada hadasho basically habistiin laga hadlo soo baxan it will nullify the TPLF threat very soon because markay taasi dhacdo TPLF aad soo socota ma jiriso contestation markaa wuxuu gali doonaa states inay ka wada hadlaan faydka Ethiopia waa waxay muhiim u socdeen